Chapter 47, Breathing. I walked out of my office a while back to get a cup of coffee in our cafe. It had been just a little over a year since opening. I stood there a moment and surveyed the room. 8 ladies who managed the local Union Gospel Mission Women's Recovery Shelter were sitting around a couple of tables discussing new plans and strategies for fresh ministry. 2 other ladies in Salvation Army uniforms were enjoying coffees at another table and seemed to be in a deep personal discussion. A young woman I knew as the young life leader at the high school half a mile away was talking with the head of Christ's Kitchen, a restaurant-style ministry that helps rescue women from homelessness or street life. Additionally, some men were in the front corner by the main windows holding a Bible study. 2 Moody Bible students had their laptops open and were doing homework. None of these people attend our church services. We had come a long way from being a downtown brick cathedral surrounded by poverty culture addicts and homeless street people. I was no longer sitting in a huge, quiet, empty building all week long, pretending that we could fill it on Sundays with an inspirational, attractive service. We no longer dealt with trying to overcome the neighborhood image, and to be honest, it smells nice in our church now when the congregation gathers. I still get amazed when I think that I had tried to close the church 3 times during my tenure. God, though, wouldn't let go of it. We were now doing church as a coffee shop, the center of a neighborhood. It's fun to come to work every day. I meet the most incredible people. Jesus uses our cafe space all the time for his purposes. Quite a lot of ministry happens here that is not run by our church. I see Bible studies going on all the time. Sometimes our church attendance grows by people who have left their churches but kept their Bible studies. For lack of a location, they've moved their Bible studies here. And since they're currently churchless, they try us out. Almost every day, some other pastor from another church is sitting there with Bibles, commentaries, and reference books open, doing studies or sermon preparation. It's not uncommon to have multiple pastors holding meetings from all kinds of various churches on any given day. Other times, it's leaders of Youth for Christ or Young Life or Family Promise or numerous other Christian nonprofit agencies and parachurch ministries. We seem to be one of the hubs for every new church planter coming to town. The network of pastors here has grown so tight that on our second Easter, 6 of us churches in the neighborhood united to do one large combined Easter service in the local 600-seat movie theater just 3 blocks away. Each of us pastors took a slice of the service. It was a fantastic experience and an inspiring display of unity, all under the banner of Jesus and his word. The neighborhood and the city often use our site too. The local business district holds their meetings in our conference rooms. We've held fundraisers for them and for agencies like Salvation Army and still others. The city's neighborhood council has moved that meeting to our site as well. Shortly after we opened, the mayor of Spokane held a conference in our site with business leaders discussing the importance of hiring people who were formerly incarcerated. One such former convict, Dave Dahl of Dave's Killer Bread from Portland, Oregon, was the featured speaker. He sold the bread business for $200 million a month later. The Citywide Homeless Coalition has opted to move their 100-member, 60-agency monthly meetings to the Gathering House. In fact, at the time I'm writing this, they had their meeting this morning, and numerous state representatives and senators were in our coffee shop church to discuss statewide issues pertaining to homelessness, crime, poverty culture, and mental illness. City council members have come to our coffee shop as speakers or to hold workshops and meetings on issues of poverty in our city. Whenever I bump into the mayor in the public settings, he asks how our church and cafe are doing. We're a county of over 500,000 people. It amazes me that Jesus would put us on the mayor's radar. We also became a cultural hub, serving as an art gallery for artists to display their works along with art shows. A local African-American jazz group and entertainment business uses us for open mic nights. A woman rents us on the first Friday of each month to have vintage Lindy Hop swing dance lessons with live music. We've done concerts and comedy shows. They aren't always Christian, but we have one rule. They must be family-friendly in content. Recovery people constantly tell us how nice it is to hear live music again since they dropped out of the bar scene long ago to get healthy. One day, a guy who was a regular in our coffee shop approached me. I knew him as a real estate agent and board member of one of the churches a few blocks away. He was also the chairman of a group called International Assistance Partners. They were a network of influential Christian businessmen and bankers who financed micro-business enterprise overseas. They had access to numerous business donation dollars that had to stay local because of certain laws and policies. They had been discussing that if they couldn't get the money to the third world, then maybe they should focus on the third world, which had come to us. They started discussions with World Relief, the local Christian agency that resettles refugees in Spokane, along with another group, Spokane Neighborhood Action Partners, known as SNAP, which had received a federal grant for business training and development of refugees. The three agencies have been in talks for months about launching ethnic food restaurants for refugee families to create sustainable businesses. They had settled on starting off with a food truck to test the market, the menus, and the ideas. They were having trouble finding locations that suited the city, their business model, and the health department. "Would you guys be interested in being the location?" he asked me. "Sure," I answered. "That fits our heartbeat. What do you need?" "We need a fully operational health department approved industrial kitchen that we could rent out for $15 per hour for about 20 hours per week. We need a fixed location to establish the food truck. The health department demands that we place it on pavement, not gravel, so one space in the back corner of your parking lot would be ideal since it's a busy corner spot. We would like to access to water and electricity too. We'll need a gray water drain installed somewhere on site, and we plan paying rent for this too." "Well, we don't actually have a full operational kitchen," I answered sadly. "We had to cut out kitchen equipment and some of the mandatory kitchen upgrade when we ran out of money building the place. But what if I can raise the money somehow?" After a moment's consideration, I remembered, I do have access to a reimbursement grant from the state to pay for the kitchen equipment. "Well, what else does the kitchen need besides that?" "Oh, about $6,000 in health code upgrades," I answered. "New flooring, sink improvements and such. We'll have to raise that too." "No problem. International Assistance Partners will give you a grant for $6,000, and then we will front you the $15,000 to buy the equipment, and you can pay it back after you submit the receipts to the state for the reimbursement." Just like that, we built our kitchen and launched an ethnic food truck with a refugee from Afghanistan. They had fantastic kebabs. The food truck provided a generous monthly income, and our new kitchen enabled us to expand our coffee shop to a full-scale restaurant. We served killer gourmet grilled cheese sandwiches, stellar soup, and an outstanding salad bar. This was an outstanding move for us on two fronts. First, barista work requires a pretty high functioning awareness with multitasking abilities. We had to let some of our trainees go in the past year who simply couldn't keep up. Had we the ability to offer focused kitchen skill training, we could have kept them. Second, the income generated solely from the resale of baked goods and espresso was not enough to sustain the whole enterprise, especially with the handicap of church on the exterior sign. It was for all these economic enterprises, events, and artistic expressions that we decided to not opt out on paying the property taxes as a church. Once a church opts out of property taxes, all these enterprises, meetings, art shows, and concerts become off limits. The kind of church we do now is way too fun to lose all that. For 5 years, we held a Sunday afternoon free community meal. 150 to 200 people came each week to eat the only free hot meal served downtown on Sundays. We would watch football or NASCAR together and then give out hygiene packs, hats, gloves, shoes, and coats. We made a lot of street friends. It was wild and sometimes crazy. Once in a while, the cops or medical emergency units were called, but we built a great reputation with the street culture as well as the city government. Everyone said, "That's what church should be doing. Good for you guys. More churches should do that." But of course, they wouldn't come. They wouldn't attend. They wouldn't volunteer or give to keep it going. Sunday church services have been down to 30 members, 20 street people, and 4 dogs. About 30 of us stayed through the build-out. Now we have about 120 people attending on a regular basis, and we're growing. We no longer have board meetings where the topic on the agenda is, How drunk can someone be and still attend services? Or, where do we put the shopping carts full of personal belongings during the services to keep them safe? The church giving can now pay the bills, which was quite a change following 6 years of monthly losses. For 7 years, while I pastored this church, we lost money every month. Sometimes the losses were to the tune of $5,000 per month. Yet we were still standing. We were an economic miracle of improbability. We are no longer sitting in a 12,000 square foot building on a downtown corner site that our church occupied since 1905. We had known what it was like to have 40,000 cars per day drive by us and not know our name. Almost everyone I meet around town has heard of the Gathering House, even if they can't figure out what we are. We had one last hurdle. On May 31st, 2016, the little startup church that was once a Mars Hill satellite campus but was now an independent church plant would owe us about $900,000. We would have to repossess the building if they couldn't come up with the money. Worse than that, we owed about $300,000 on our new location, due on the same date, or else the previous owner could repossess our site. We had no doubt that he would do that in a heartbeat after all the improvements we had made. We also had no doubt that the congregation downtown would be unable to come up with such a huge sum after being in business for less than 2 years. They, too, were about 150 people on a Sunday. In March of that year, their pastor and I met for coffee. He said that although their people were deeply committed and income was around $20,000 per month, no bank would give them a loan because they hadn't been in business long enough. They were out of options. God had been doing some odd things on this journey so far, so this time I didn't panic or anything. I'm not sure I had the energy to panic left in me. We just prayed. Quietly behind the scenes, I began talking to some wealthy California friends about buying our site for us and becoming our landlords. If we could hold on to this site, we could repossess the old site, resell it, and pay off the mortgage to the new investor if push came to shove. It would take several months, but that seemed to be our only hope. By mid-April, I had pledges of only about $175,000 to buy our building. Nothing is ever easy. It's a funny feeling to be rich on paper but broke in daily operations all the time. Many years ago, when I planted a church, I went looking for a denomination to join. That's how I found the Evangelical Covenant in the first place. A great denomination has resources of intelligence and skills to offer at crucial times. They have finances too, if they are exceptional, albeit the latter always comes with strings attached. At the end of April, 6 weeks before the deadline, our denomination, which was very aware of our situation, came up with an incredible idea. The loaning branch, called National Covenant Properties, was forbidden by policy to loan to churches that were not part of our denomination. They planned to give us the $900,000. We would then loan it to the startup church that bought our old site for something around 6% interest. They would pay it back to us to cover their debt obligation. We then would pay off the $300,000 or so balance of our mortgage and pay off the $180,000 equity line of credit we still owed NCP, which had been used in the previous 4 years to keep us alive. We would then pass the loan to our Covenant Conference office in Seattle so that we would not be stuck as a lending institution. National Covenant Properties would earn the roughly 6%, and the Pacific Northwest Conference office would hold the deed on the old site while awaiting a payoff when Redemption Church would finally secure a bank loan in a couple of years. The one caveat was that once this deal was done, neither the conference office nor NCP had any additional funds to place in reserve to cover if Redemption Church ended up defaulting and being unable to come up with a loan. So about $100,000 was needed to place in reserves until the debt was paid in full. The entity that did have those kinds of funds was us. In fact, we would have more than enough left over. We became an economic powerhouse after being on the bottom of the flow chart for all those years. My super intelligent church board members countered that if we were the ones securing the loan, so to speak, we would retain a percentage of the property rights if it did default. I make this sound so easy, but in fact the conversations were a bit dicey, at least until all the dust settled and everyone knew where we stood. We closed the deal, handled all the exchanges, and for the first time in over 7 years, we could financially breathe. The air feels good. I like breathing.